These are the Phase 2 implementation plans. Hopefully you've heard about these plans. They were part of the rule and were built into the rule to provide flexibility. There is a submission date of December 21st, 2016. We'll talk more about that. It's important to first start with a broad overview of the phases of implementing electronic reporting. So for Phase 1, that's got the one-year deadline. That's DMRs and the biosolids report, where EPA runs the biosolids program. And there's a typo there I'll need to fix. It should be 42. You can see it's down there, right there. Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is correct. So we are working with states. There are 46 state programs in the Virgin Islands. So we're working with them, but we're working with them to implement DMR electronic reporting. And then we have 42 states where EPA runs the federal biosolids program. These are the Phase 1 reports. The implementation plan covers Phase 2. So we're talking about everything else, all of these other reports, general permit reports, pre-treatment program reports, CAFO reports, biosolids reports for the 8 states that run the biosolids program. All of these other reports that are in the rule are covered in Phase 2. And here they are. So the DMR, that's Phase 1. Everything else, and then the biosolids report where EPA runs the program, that's also Phase 1. Everything else is Phase 2. All these reports are going to be transitioning from paper to electronic reporting, and the start date for that is no later than December 21st, 2020 for Phase 2 data. So just a quick background on why we have these implementation plans. And the reason for them is that we start with the proposed rule, which is we initially proposed 2 years after the effective date of the rule to have everything done. And many states indicated they would not be able to meet that date. They said that's just not possible. And we agreed in the final rule to extend the implementation period to 5 years. We gave states the additional time provided they tell us and share with us their plans for moving from paper to electronic reporting. EPA does not dictate the electronic reporting tools that a state may use. Rather, we set performance requirements that states can use to build their own electronic reporting tools. So, for example, states have the option of using EPA's NetDMR or NET, or they can build their own tool so long as it meets EPA's performance-based requirements for making sure the data is encrypted and authenticated. So there's a lot of flexibility we provide, and the purpose of the implementation plan is to document the plans. So the implementation plan is there to ensure that the state will meet the Phase 2 electronic reporting deadline of December 21st, 2020. This implementation plan must provide enough details, tasks, milestones, roles and responsibilities, necessary resources to clearly describe how the state will successfully implement Phase 2 data collection. As I noted earlier, this plan will also include a description of the state's process for reviewing and approving electronic waivers. And as I noted earlier, this is about Phase 2, so this does not include DMRs. So the purpose of the plan is to help states think through all the major tasks related to Phase 2 electronic reporting. It clearly communicates how each program will implement electronic reporting to EPA. So it's an important document that describes how a state's going to go about making this transition so that if they intend to use our tool, they will clearly document it. Or if they're going to build their own tool, they will clearly document when they expect this tool to be in operation. It's important to note that these plans can be updated by states, and we intend to share the information that are in these Phase 2 implementation plans so that other states can learn and collaborate if necessary. To help make this process of submitting these plans easy or easier, we created a template. We worked with the Exchange Network. We set up an integrated project team. Many thanks to Alyssa out in Colorado for co-sharing that with me. It was a very collegial and collaborative process. We worked for about a couple months and had that template finished and posted it on the Exchange Network site. It's important to note that the use of the template is optional, but even if you don't use it, you should at least look at it because it outlines all of the major tasks and things that you should consider as part of your Phase 2 plan. So let me quickly go over to that plan, that template. You can see here, here is the template. Phase 2 plan for agency name, give you date, and then we provide the purpose, why we have the plan, and then an overview executive summary talking about the agency's data system, e-reporting capabilities. This section should provide a primary contact for this implementation plan and the approximate date when the agency expects to fully implement Phase 2 data collection. Section 2 is a quick snapshot in time of the universe of facilities, whether they're major or non-major. And this is important because some facility data it may not be in ISIS. A good example is there was a state that had a urban stormwater, industrial stormwater permit, general permit that covered several thousand facilities. These facilities were required and did file DMRs, but none of the facility information or permit limit information or any of the DMRs were entered into ISIS. And that's understandable given the past data sharing policy, but what we're moving towards is sharing all facility information, whether they're major or non-major, individual general permit cover facilities. And this section here is to capture any data gaps that are not yet resolved. So this would help us understand where there might be data sets of data that were not yet being shared with EPA's data system called ISIS-NPDES. So Section 3 talks about the planned tools and data systems that you're using to manage the data. Are you going to use EPA's tool or build your own tool? Section 4 gets to the key tasks. When are you going to stand up your tools for general permit reports, for CAFOs, urban stormwater, pretreatment? It goes right down the list. Are there any Chrome Air issues that are outstanding? Do you have any need for assistance? We have staff here, my colleague Eric French, who's been actively working on behalf of states to make sure that none of these Chrome Air packages get lost or delayed unnecessarily. And so we can use this section here to identify any issues with Chrome Air approval. The rule also builds on existing NPDES regulations that states update their statutes or regulations as necessary. So this is a quick update on how that process is going. This is the temporary and permanent waiver approval process that I mentioned earlier. Section 8 talks about outreach and training that the state plans on taking. It's a summary. And then we get into some alternative options. So what we described in the implementation, the integrated project team, is that this is Plan B in case there are issues with Plan A. So what we don't want to have happen is for the state to put down a solution, and then if there's either a technical or a funding issue, that just stops everything. We want the state to think through, well, if the first plan doesn't work, what's the second plan? We ask if there are any obstacles to rule implementation. These could be budget or staffing. These are things that we need to be look out for and perhaps provide assistance. And then finally, in the last section, we look at what point or under what circumstances should the agency, with the state agency and EPA, come together for a possible reassessment of the plan. And this is really meant to be a way to continue the dialogue so that states and EPA are working together collaboratively to make a smooth transition to electronic reporting. So that's the template. As I noted, these plans are due next December 21st. We ask that you please send them to us via NPDES e-reporting at epa.gov. You can use Word or Adobe. And if you wouldn't mind, just because we'll be managing at least 47 of these plans, put in your state and agency, EPA region, and then the date you send it. So for example, Virginia DEQ, they're in Region 3. It's their implementation plan. And if they sent it on December 21st, they would put in 21 December 2016. It is very important to note that we will review, but we will not approve these plans. Our intention is only to provide comments on how to strengthen each plan. It is our goal to finish our review of these plans and provide comments if there are any ways to improve it, no later than 6 months after receipt of the plan. And then it's also important to note that we consider these plans to be living documents that can and should be updated as unexpected issues and problems may arise during Phase 2 implementation. And as we noted in the preamble to the final rule, we plan to post these plans on our website to provide the public with greater transparency on the milestones and tasks each state will be taking to move towards electronic reporting. And I provide the citation to the preamble of the final rule there.